Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Sam Mak. Sam is a diversity and inclusion consultant that specializes in Middle Eastern cultures. And thank you, Sam, for being on the podcast with me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Kimberly.
Yes, and just for the listeners to know, we met each other because of a group we're in called Heartrepreneurs with
Yes.
Carrie Levine, which is a group that serves or does business from the heart. And and when we were in Philadelphia, you interviewed me, and that was so fun. And so now it's my turn. I get to interview Sam Mak.
Awesome. Yes, we had a good time in Philly.
Yes, we did. So let's start out by just tell us a little bit about you. Like, where did you grow up, about your journey, and how you actually got to doing what you're doing today?
So I was actually born in Pakistan, and I came here when I was 5 years old. And one of my fun memories, Kimberly, that I really think shaped me is when I came to the States, I spoke no English. And a week later, I started school speaking no English. And by Christmas, so school started in September, by Christmas, I was fluent. So I don't remember how I got fluent in English, but I realize now I am very good at picking up body language, other kinds of communication, reading faces, and I never knew where that came from. And when I was doing some of my own coaching and personal growth, I realized that in those 3 months, I had learned so much to pick up on non-verbal cues because I got in trouble. I remember my most frustrating thing would be like going to gym, right? You don't know what team you're on. And so the kids figured this out very quickly. So they were like, hey, you can confuse us. So they're like, you're supposed to give us the ball. No, you're supposed to give us the ball. Like, we're your team. No, and I didn't even know what team I was on. And so I remember, they'd be upset because I didn't know, what I was supposed to do. Or the teacher would sit and give directions. Of course, I missed them. So I would just draw on the paper because it was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And they're like, she'd be upset. Like, you were supposed to circle. Like, but if you don't know what the word circle means. So really and that served me probably most of my life.
Wow. So, and then, so you got here when you were 5, you said, and then.
Yep, 5 years old.
Yeah, and then what happened as you were growing up with, because you are working in diversity now, so I'm watching.
Yeah. So it's been fun because you grow up with 2 cultures, and you look at what people think of whoever those other people are, whoever them is, and I think as adults we limit our choices so much because Kimberly, why don't you take a career as an artist? Well, I would never be one of those people, or I'm not one of them. And when I grew up, with 2 different cultures, there was no them. The way the kids talked about other countries was totally wrong at school. And yet, when you go to Pakistan and the way they see the world, because they haven't really traveled or lived it, was wrong too. And I was like, the assumptions we make about people that we don't know and we don't understand are so broad and so general and so just wrong. And so it was interesting because I was always defending Pakistan and the Middle East cultures when I was in the States, and I was always defending America American cultures when I was out of the States. These people aren't as horrible as they look on TV. So it's been fun, learning that way. My father was a civil engineer. My mom's father was a civil engineer, so I ended up being an electrical engineer. I broke the mold a little bit, but what I realize is if our listeners are still playing that corporate game where you think the corporate job you get the right job with the right benefits and the package, whatever the package is and all that, is going to make you happy. So I did play that game for 14 years, trying to go from corporation to corporation and working my butt off because I'm an achiever. And what I realized was that those jobs are just not going to make you happy. So you got to find your own path and figure out who you are as a person. And in my opinion, a lot of corporations don't develop that skill.
Yes, yes. Yeah, just from looking from the corporate side, I know a lot of people kind of feel stuck in their jobs there because the benefits are good, the money is good, and there's other people that enjoy the system. They're good with corporate, but still a lot of your freedom is gone working in corporate, and you do have to deal with, like you said, diversity issues, many issues.
Well, for
that
me,
you don't have to.
me personally, diversity comes in so many different ways, and one was ethical diversity. And as an electrical engineer, Kimberly, you don't know how many times you've been asked to doctor data. They didn't want to show the client certain results, and I remember as I specialize in shortwave radio, which is high frequency radio systems, and they're based on the solar cycle. It's an 11-year solar cycle, one sun on the whole planet. It works in certain ways. And when it's low sunspots, radio signals do not propagate that well. And so you always design for low sunspot because you design for the worst case scenario. And high sunspot, everything works fabulous, and low sunspot, nothing works. And so, designing without low sunspots is like designing a heating system for the summer. Never have to turn it on. So I was asked not to include, the low sunspot data in one of my designs, and I just couldn't do it. So I did it anyways. I put it in, and I found out when the proposal went to the client, they had removed that data. And so it wasn't just, the diversity as being a female and a minority and an engineer. It was also the diversity, like, these are not my ethics, and my friends don't play this way, and the people I want to be associated with don't do stuff like this to win a contract,
Yeah, and that is huge because, how can, I think I couldn't sleep at night knowing that was going on at my job, and if my name was on a project and then someone else doctored it and then gave it to the client as my information, I think that would cause me a lot of angst.
I know, and it was perfect because, they came up to me point blank and asked me to do it, and I didn't, and so they just deleted it. So, and I found out, 3 months later, I was looking through the proposal. Had I not even looked through it, I would have never known. Mm-hmm. So there were just little things like that, that find the people that you really jive with and that you feel safe around. And a lot of that is on what kind of morals and ethics that you have, that, value systems. And I think one of the biggest challenges I had, and I'm sure our listeners have as well, is a lot of us have never sat down and said, what are my values? What are my values? Who am I? What are my values? What is really important to me? And I knew I was a good, honest person, but I had no idea that ethics was so high on my list.
Yes, and that really is important. So, so you were in corporate, but then you had to have the courage to change, to do something different. So how did you do that? How did you make that jump?
So I started in direct sales, and what I loved about, well, first of all, I'm a hardcore engineer, very good at numbers. And so I was using some makeup, and they said, if you sell it, you get it at half price. So I was like, well, I just wanted a half price. So what is the absolute minimum I got to do to be a seller? and get it at half price. But what I didn't realize that that journey would do was it put me on a path where they said you get all our education and training for free now that you're a seller. I was like, whoa, okay. So I started going to that, and that mindset was a totally different mindset. And it put me on the mindset of personal growth. So I think that was probably the biggest thing that changed my life is you go into this journey of personal growth, and all of a sudden I'm reading books by Tony Robbins, and the next thing I know, I'm at a seminar with Tony Robbins walking on coals, and then reading books by Zig Ziglar, and I met Zig Ziglar, and then, you know, I'm doing workshops with Jim Rohn, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and it was just amazing, you know, just amazing how my mind opened up. And so what started happening was, as an engineer, I'm getting promotions now because they're like, oh my God, the clients can understand you. You know, we can put you at marketing. We can do this. Because I was so focused on the data and the numbers and all that. I never realized all the other probably right brain characteristics that we need to really succeed. And so this path, it was giving me those right brain characteristics. So what I used to do was, on the bottom of all my data charts, I would do all the data. I would do all the work, right, Kimberly? Someone else would present it. And so naturally it looked like they did the work. So what I started doing was putting my initials, FM, and the company logo at the bottom of all the charts. And so then people were like, oh, were you the person that ran all the data? I'm like, yeah. I did all the propagation analysis that was presented at the meeting. And so that got me the recognition and the promotions. Just that little bit, like, you've got to advocate for yourself. No one is going to promote you. You can sit in the back corner and run charts until the day you die. No one's going to notice, but just, you know, I had to put my name, even as an engineer, you know, in a non-business setting, I had to put my name out there.
Yes, and that is so important to know, because I know growing up in my family, I grew up in a Christian family, and, you know, being humble is very much emphasized. You know, you don't blow your own horn, you don't, you know, tell, you know, say good things about yourself. You expect someone else has to come and say that. And you're right, if you don't promote yourself, most cases other people aren't. They're just busy, that they don't care, they're just busy doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and waiting for that acknowledgement, and waiting for this and waiting for that. And so what I realized once I learned how to talk to clients, and once I learned that we really need to consider the other person's perspective, I was able, what I realized was that engineering charts, numbers, hard data doesn't appeal to people. So I started making my data into pictures. And, you know, I think the highlight of my engineering career was pretty early. Senator John Glenn, the astronaut, was actually presenting my charts on C-SPAN to Congress. And so we were invited into the director of engineering, you know, office to watch him do that. And because I had come up with this idea of putting everything on charts, it was very easy for the senator to get his point across.
Yeah.
You know, whereas hardcore data would not have done that. So just little things like that, you know, that people understand pictures better than numbers when it comes to hard engineering data, and looking at it from someone else's viewpoint, how we can help them help us, or how we can help them do their job better, makes a big difference.
Yeah, and that is really exciting, first of all, to have your work presented that way.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is true that just by changing our perspective a little bit, just coming and standing in the other person's shoes, makes such a huge difference on how we act and react, and you know, how powerful we can be in a relationship with someone.
Absolutely. So that's kind of been my journey. And I think the diversity and the empowerment of women, probably one of the comments I've heard so often is just, you know, being a female engineer, just the disbelief that you can do that level of thought because you're a woman, or do that level of math. Constantly having to prove yourself, it would almost be like in a meeting I would have to go in and tell them about my degrees and my projects and my accomplishments, because this package would not give that,
Yes.
and fighting all the stuff that and back then, I'm older, so back then even people knew women were discriminated against or had lower pay, but it wasn't really an issue. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't an issue. It was like, yeah, this is how it is.
Yeah. People didn't
This
talk
is
about
how,
it as being
yeah,
unnormal. Yeah.
yeah. This is how we do stuff. So I think that was the difference about working in a female-oriented company where the cosmetic company was, and a male-oriented company where engineering was. I remember, as a female engineer, if you're sitting in a room, generally you're the only female in the room, most likely. And I remember one time we ran out of agendas, and someone was like, well, someone needs to go and make some copies of agendas. And all of a sudden, everyone's looking at me, you know. Then there was another time we had some clients coming in for some training, and they wanted someone to do the lunch orders. And again, I'm the only female in a room. And if you don't do it, okay, because I remember the menu thing, it's getting tense and tense and tense, and everyone's looking at me, and I'm not saying a word, because I know if I just sneeze, they're going to say, okay, Sam, you're up.
Right.
And I can't do that, right?
Right.
So it's just getting tense and tense and tense. And the interesting thing is, Kimberly, when you're working in a corporation, you have the option to be the people pleaser and do the menus, even though you have a master's degree and they're kids, college kids with half your experience sitting in the room that would never be asked because they're male. Or you get labeled the big B word, because if you're a female that stands her ground, then it goes into aggressive, right? If you're a female that shows emotions, it goes to hysterical. It doesn't ever, you're never in the right place at the right time. So I just love the B word, because it's, boys, I'm taking control here. It's an acronym.
I love that. I love that. Boys,
Yeah.
I'm taking control here.
Yeah, boys, I'm taking control here. So no, I'm not going to do your, lunch menus, because I didn't get a master's degree in computer architecture to take the lunch menus, and so it was just kind of interesting. But I remember that kind of tension. Now, the flip side, when I had finally gotten into leadership in the cosmetic business, there was a lady, we were at a meeting again, but it's all women, right? And I'm another woman, but I'm the newbie, I'm the little kid, I'm the one that doesn't have any accolades or anything to show. The lady next to me was probably the biggest hotshot at the table at that point. She got up and she said, she looked down at me and she's like, I'm going to get some coffee. Would you like a cup of coffee? And I thought, man, in 14 years of an engineer, I was never offered coffee. But if anyone ever needed coffee, you're the coffee girl, you're the copy girl, you're the lunch ordering girl, but, never the professional engineer. So, and it was really funny, because we put qualifiers on people that we want to differentiate from. So, if you say she's a woman, then that's not discriminatory. But if you say she's a Pakistani woman, why do you need to qualify that? If you're going into a room looking for someone that's dressed a certain way, and that helps, makes sense. But a lot of the engineers I worked with were about my father's age, and they would always introduce me as the lady engineer. So, not the regular engineer. Not one of those. The lady engineer.
Yes. So let me ask you this. Let's say there's a woman in that situation where she's working more in a male-dominated industry and she wants to stand in her power. Do you have any advice on, like, how do you walk into a room? How do you present yourself? How do you stand your ground when people are looking at you, expecting you to do something that's not your job?
I would just say there's two ways to look at it, okay? Kimberly, first of all, and this was not me. Am I the person that wants to change minds? Is this my playground? Is this really where I want to make an impact? If that is you, and you want to be in a male-dominated society, you want to be the one that pushes the envelope and says that, yes, then I would sit there, and you've got to behave in a way that's respected in that environment. And unfortunately, the way that's respected in that environment is to behave like a man. So you go, you take the seat at the table, you don't wait for invitations, you don't ask to be spoken, you speak as if your ideas are the best thing on the planet. I will tell you, in that environment, you will need an advocate. In that environment, I highly recommend you have an advocate, because there were so many times where I would say, hey, let's do X, Y, Z. Okay, and it just gets dismissed, just dismissed. 7 minutes later, a guy's like, hey, let's do X, we should do X, Y, Z. Oh my God, brilliant. Oh my God, Brad, that's a brilliant, that was amazing. They did not actually hear me. They did not actually hear me. And I told one of my coworkers, that this is what's happening at the meetings. He's like, oh, it's in your head, it's this, it's that. I was like, okay, next meeting, you check it. And so he walked out of the meeting going, oh my God, they would say your ideas 5 minutes later and take the credit. And I was like, absolutely. So he actually, came onto my side. And at the meeting, when the next guy would say my idea 5 minutes later, he would say, no, Sam actually said it first. Sam just said that. But it was amazing. Maybe it's the frequency of my voice or something. They just did not hear it. So understand that if you want to be a pioneer in a certain environment, okay, then you're going to get the pushback, and you're going to get that whole, find the path and being the pioneer. And if that is your life's mission and your playground, then absolutely go in a, all male dominated environment as a woman, or a female dominated environment as a guy, and start breaking those barriers because of the male-female communication differences and perceptions and how we've been cultured. If that is your playground. If it is not your playground, then find the environment that is. Mm-hmm. Okay, because otherwise it's no fun being the pioneer and pushing envelopes in something you don't believe in. Mm-hmm. That is not your life's mission. That, it's just going to be frustrating every day because you're doing something you really don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I have a further question. It could be about male, female, but it could be in any diversity situation, and that's showing up and the way that you dress. So, someone who's pushing the envelope, you said they want to act like a man, but do they want to look like a man? And I've seen that in the past where women dress like a man. I thought it was, I thought it was awful because we're feminine beings. But,
yeah.
And what about someone who is from Pakistan or someone in the Middle East, and they wear the garment that is, normal for their culture? Or I've seen even men, wear I think it's called a turban,
yeah.
Or different things depending on their culture. What are your thoughts on that? Like in a business situation, how do you stand in your power? Because I think that's the most important thing.
What I really think is interesting is that you need to be true to who you are. And if your playground is that you want to push that envelope to show that women can be just as good as engineers as men, like if that is your woman, then be a woman engineer, if the dress is suits, then wear a suit, but wear a pink one or a white one, or what, be a woman. And what I would also say is always dress slightly better than everybody else, because how you look, whether male or female, affects how you feel. And when you're looking just slightly above, everybody else, it's like you go into a black tie room wearing, jeans. It's like instant hits your self-esteem. So I would say dress a little bit above. Now, as far as cultural dressing, what I think is really interesting is, Kimberly, if you look at any movie, anything you've seen, when you see businessmen from the West, Europe, America, go to do business with, let's say, the Orient or whatever, they dress in suits that represent their culture. I mean, they don't put on, kimonos or the jackets or, they go to Arab, you see them doing it, they don't put on the abayas and stuff like that. They go in like, I'm an American businessman, or I'm a British or German, whatever, businessman. This is how we dress in Germany. And they wear their European, if you go to the European suits, I mean, they're like light blue and they're like all these colors. The US are more navy blue, black, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they dress like themselves. And yet, when other people come to do business here, we expect them to totally melt and look like what we think is comfortable. So what I would say is your dress is not about how you look and all that. It's about what gives you power. And whatever gives you power, I would guess is not mimicking somebody else. Whatever gives you that comfort and that power inside is going to be who you really are. I love makeup. I love how people see it as so, like you're afraid to be vulnerable, you're trying to cover up, or it's fake or whatever. No, I have super dry skin. Putting on makeup makes my face feel like it's not going to crack, and it protects my skin, and I use mineral-based products that nourish my skin. So I like it. So people can sit a million times and say about makeup, but for me, it's a power thing. Now, there are some people that are using it as a cover-up or a hiding or I'm ashamed of how I look, so I'm going to put all this stuff on. They don't need to be wearing makeup. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it should be something that gives you power, that helps you put your best foot forward. And so your clothes, the message you're giving to the world, it's all an extension of you. And there are situations where if you want to be a partner in a law firm, or if you want, there are places where they have dress codes of how you're supposed to be perceived. They have a new thing here now that every time your kid gets a license, and I have 4 kids, right? You have to go to court for 2 hours. Yeah. The judge, first the cop comes for an hour and tells scary stories of things teens have done in cars. So all his war stories. Then the judge, you go to family court, and she says, here's where you're going to end up if you do stupid things with a car, right? And then the judge gives a license to the parent, because it's a 16-year-old kid, and said, it's your parents till you're 18, and your parents have the right to give it to you and take it away. And then the parent takes the responsibility, saying, yes, I trust this child to drive. Mm-hmm. But there's a dress code in there. And these teenagers come dressed like high school, and they don't let you come into the courtroom. And so, always dress, I say, above whatever the standard is. And there are dress codes in certain places. It doesn't mean you have to dress like a man. I mean, but you can still get the dark suit and this and that and put your signature on it, mm-hmm. And be appropriate for whatever the situation is.
Exactly. And I just wanted to ask you, as far as just diversity and people actually getting along with each other, people feeling like they belong, feel like they're accepted, where do you see the biggest issues? Is it at work? Is it at school? Is it just in life? And how do we become more empathetic and more accepting of other people?
I really think it's the messaging we've been given as kids. I think the prejudices happen way early in life when we're those sponges and we think that everything that comes out of our parents' mouth or our teacher's mouth is fact. And these people really shape, our messages. But right now, my bigger goal as far as diversity and inclusion are all these subliminal messages in the media. Okay, so for example, if it's a mop commercial, why is the woman using a mop? Why is it always the woman doing the dishes? That kind of stuff. There's a home improvement show I really enjoy, and it just drove me nuts. So it's a couple that remodels homes, and they're showing their couple clients their new home, and the woman walks the other woman into the kitchen and says, "This is your area." So how did, and it's so true, Kimberly, like men don't know what to do in the kitchen, but we've got these, even if you're not aware, just the home improvement show, the one woman telling the other woman, "Hey, I mean, the kitchen's for you," and automatically all the men are like, "Yeah, I don't know how to wash a dish. I don't know how to, I don't know how to do these basics," which is just not true. So there's so many different messages that we're getting. If you read a magazine cover for, let's just say, men and women. Men, how to be more virile, how to be more confident, how to, kill the promotion. Women, is your nose too fat? Tips to thin out your nose. Bulging thighs, no problem. 2020's coming. Yeah. Here's what you got to do to fix your thighs and your nose. But that kind of subliminal messaging that we've all gotten has made these patterns about what men and women can do. And it's the same thing with cultural people. When I was growing up in the 70s, we had all these Polak jokes. And I didn't know what a Polak was, but everyone in the school is joking about Polak, so, they must be dodo heads. Even now here where I live, there's a lot of jokes about West Virginia, and the backcountry. And what I had no idea is, did you know in the, I think 50s or 60s, we almost bombed West Virginia? Yeah, the United States government. There was a coal miners strike, so it's another rich versus poor people, and they wanted to bomb the miners to get them back to working. And in order to do that, they started a spin propaganda that these were, stupid, bumpkin, lazy people. And in order to, this is the only way to get those kind of people to work. Where, I'm sure it was, they're probably dying of lung cancer. Your brother's gone, your cousin's gone, your son now has it, 2 and 2, you're beginning to put stuff together. But and that stigmatism is still in our society. From that, and we've done that with just about in the U.S. for our culture since World War II, since we've, we've bombed over 70 countries. And so for each of those bombings, like the West Virginia thing, we started a spin campaign about how these people are awful and, this and that. And it's kind of ironic because in high school, the Russians were the enemies. The communists were coming and they were going to blow up the world and use their nukes. And, we had all those Rusky jokes and the commie and, are you do you associate with the Communist Party and all this stuff? And now the Russians are in vogue. Those same evil people. Well, how did this happen? And we were in bed with Saddam Hussein. He was our go-to guy, bombing Iran with his chemical weapons that we gave him. We loved him. And now it's just like it's kind of ironic. So I think my goal right now and is we need a higher level of human being. it's not about these cultural messages. We need a higher level of human being that says, you know what, I appreciate that you are trying to manipulate me and sway me based on hatred and fear, but I'm not falling for that. I'm not falling for that. You know, I have met several people from the Soviet Union or Russia, not one of them have been jerks. And I'm sure if I'd met them in the 80s, they wouldn't have been jerks either, you know. And just to get to the point where, yeah, I understand that the woman always uses a mop, but I have sons and they also can use a mop.
Yeah.
And I'm going to teach them how to mop the house anyways. Those kind of messages. And there's so many that we don't even realize we're being bombarded with constantly.
Yes. So you're making a huge impact in many areas. I know you're a speaker, you have programs specifically for college students. So could you just kind of go over all the things you're doing now to make an impact in this area of diversity and accepting people?
So, it's my whole thing, it's not just diversity and accepting people, it's being a higher level human being so that we don't have these kind of issues. Because when people learn how to play nice in the sandbox, or they don't understand race, or they don't understand discrimination, they don't participate in it. They just don't. Like kids don't naturally come up and say, where are you from? They never did. All the kids at the playground were like, hey, do you want to play hopscotch? Okay, I want to play hopscotch. It was never like, where are you from? Why do you look like that? What holidays are you celebrating? What is your view on the president? They never said that. It was like, hey, I want to ride bikes. Do you want to ride bikes with me? Okay, we're friends. Now we're friends. And we need to get back to that level of innocence before we were dumped with all these messages that just have not served us. And so I started working with college kids because I realized college, you make a lot of decisions about life. It's the first time you're away from home for most people, and it's the first time you're away from your family system, so you're looking at it from an outsider, and there's stuff that you think is totally normal that your roommates like you do what. I remember I had one roommate that her mother forbade using the same towel twice. Like if you bathed with one towel, it's dirty. And so she had like 14, 15 towels. And we have this, dorm room. And she's going through these. She's like, you can't use the same towel. I'm like, really? Really? 2 weeks later? You're clean. You wipe the water off a clean body. How's the towel dirty? But it was just interesting. You have all these beliefs that we feel are normal are now getting challenged, right? And so that's why I aim for college kids and just going and speaking to them and opening their mind and letting them know that there are other options. The other reason I selected college kids is this is the generation where you could be, my generation, you got in trouble for passing notes in class. Man, you could be texting someone in Korea in class. I mean, talk about passing notes. It's a whole new level. And, this whole thing about video games and stuff, my kids sometimes play video games. They're playing against people all over the world. They are playing against kids all over the world. And so they need to be able to relate in a way of not having fear, not having judgment, coming in with curiosity and a sense of adventure that things are going to be fun. And yeah, there are evil people everywhere, and there are people that are going to hurt you everywhere. There are bad people everywhere, even in your family. But that you can't, use that as a brushstroke to paint everybody.
Got it. So how can people find you? Do you have a website?
So, my website's www.speakerauthormotivator.com, and you can also find me at Sam Mak Speaker on Facebook. My whole goal right now and the movement that I'm starting is viral for good. And it's, why don't we make good content go viral? Why do we make bad stuff go viral? So there were all these videos that I've seen about people surprising people, like going out of their way to do kind stuff for people. Could you imagine, Kimberly, what our life would be like if all our shows and media were like that? Oh, here's how you can do something fantastic for someone. Oh, here's how you can shock them with flowers. Oh, here's how you can, clean up, go and clean up their backyard. What if all our media was, hey, clean up your neighbor's yard. Hey, stuff like this instead of, the lady beating the cat or, the nasty stuff that goes viral. Oh, look at this fight. You look at this. Why have we decided that that stuff's worth watching? And that stuff's what goes viral. And so just elevating our thought processes from what we consider as entertainment, and how we treat people. And it's not just on, race or religion. It's on a human level that when, as human beings, have we gotten so low, that some of these talk shows and the degrading comments and stuff, like, this is normal for our leaders. Where did we miss the boat? Because I don't get it. I don't get it. So I feel like if we changed what we were ingesting as far as media, as far as speaking, as far as thoughts, great podcasts like this one, then we can change how we focus, how we treat people, and how our world functions now.
Yeah. And I know you also have a book coming out soon.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So it just got to the publisher, so we're looking for a release in spring. It's Muslim myth busting: what 1/4 of the world really believes, and it's my story, and just kind of my story is living two cultures simultaneously, and what I love about both of them and how they blend together. So it's been a fun little project to get that story out. I did make one little error. I was having several people read and review the book before the manuscript went in, and one of them was my daughter. So the digs from the book still have not stopped. So anyways, but yeah, so I have the upcoming book coming out. But I would just say, whatever corner of the world you are, wherever you show up, make sure that your presence and your energy makes it better and makes it brighter. And, so if you're in a corporate job where you feel stuck and your values aren't being respected, then what I recommend is that whatever your presence is, you make it better. Even if it is that every time you go to the bathroom sink and there's just, some water around the sink, and you just take your extra paper towel and just do a little wipe, that everything that you leave, if someone's left the light on, you conserve the power, whatever we can do to make our impact with our energy a little bit better. Compliment someone you wouldn't normally compliment, hold the door open for someone, that's carrying groceries or just needs a little extra help. Be kind to a child that's freaking out on an airplane. I have a thing of, I always compliment moms on airplanes, especially the ones with babies at the end of the flight, because I know what that mom went through to try to keep that child quiet. So this is who we are as human beings. This is the level we want to play at. And, let's not get sucked into the manipulation and what I call the toxic media that's a lot on social media, and someone else's anger at half truths. No one is purposely trying to hurt us, and we have all the power to make the impact we want. So wherever you are, it's kind of like bloom where you're planted, right?
All right. Well, thank you so much for that wisdom, just making wherever you are better and making the situation better and make the relationships better. So thank you so much for all the wisdom and for sharing. And I'll be sure to put your information in the show notes so people can find you. And I just appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you so much, Kimberly. I certainly enjoyed it.
All right, we'll talk to you again soon.
All right.